1. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, in countries like Turkey, Pakistan, Peru, etc., these countries, which are largely poor or at best are developing, face a lot of adversity and conflict amidst efforts of trying to be able to directly integrate large refugee populations, meaning a lot of people coming onto their shores and trying to come into their country, fleeing from conflict zones and fleeing from war-torn countries in an attempt to not die. We think that in status quo and historically, any attempt towards direct societal integration is in many instances faced with quite a lot of adversity and hostility, given that the majoritarian state or demographic do not like these particular people. That is to say, this is where you have a lot of inter-border skirmishes and clashes, or even things like mass racism and xenophobia against these particular people that lead to more violence and lead to the further marginalization and disenfranchisement for these very vulnerable people who we want to be able to help. Look, on both sides of the house, we want to help these people, but we also want to be able to balance peace and order to make sure that the existing state and citizens are not being overburdened or overwhelmed by these people coming in who they view as foreign. But we think because resources are scarce, and like what I mentioned in my pre-oration, in many cases, they do not have the infrastructure or the capacity to directly be able to suck them into their system and be able to integrate them. This debate is about a priority effort in terms of what we need to be able to focus on in order to be able to try and strike that balance. A few features of our model, other preemptive and substantive material will be integrated. Firstly, we think that social integration sounds cool, all that kumbaya shit that we'll probably hear from the other side, but in many cases, it's principally idealistic and very difficult to be able to do because fundamentally, these people do not like each other for a host of reasons. Ideological differences, cultural and religious norms that are not necessarily integrated within the majoritarian belief, or in certain cases, historical tensions or reasons in terms of these other people from those other places not necessarily wanting to be able to go in, or those people within that state not wanting to accept them. That is to say, the best course of action is to be able to create this form of autonomous region in order to best be able to help these people so that the resource allocation becomes easier for them and they don't necessarily overburden those particular people. How exactly does this work, right? And we think that in instances where you have direct societal integration, the success cases of that happening, if it does happen, is few and far between and is likely to be a victim of a lot of backlash and direct conflict. Because these particular people who are trying to come into your state do not have communities. People are dying. They don't have livelihood. And the ideological differences because of Maslow's hierarchy specifically make it quite difficult. The second thing I'm going to talk about is how does this autonomous thing work? Why will it be successful? Number one, we are going to support the formation, management, and creation of multiple settlements. Maybe you have some for Muslims, for Asians, from people from Latin America, those from Africa. This can largely be from a pluralistic kind of perspective. Number two, specifically through the autonomous regions, this allows people political, economic, and social capacity to be able to form cultural enclaves, which are a prerequisite of them to be able to get any form of success. That is to say, they need to be able to find their family members, their community members, people who speak the same language as them or who have the same belief system as them, for them to be able to find their bearing, to be able to understand what it truly means. Because a lot of these people came from conflict. These people are shell-shocked. They don't know what's going on. And in terms of what we want to prioritize is helping them be able to band together in order to be able to form these cults and identity and enclaves of identity. The third thing I want to say is that the success cases on our side of the house are simply bigger and easier to be able to determine because when you have the formation of these autonomous groups, it becomes easier for the international community to directly help these people. Because on side opposition, the success cases they're going to talk about have the prerequisite of people wanting to be able to get them. But for the rhetoric that we already see in status quo, people worried about these people taking their jobs, people being skeptical of their taxes going to be able to help these people, people worried that these people share a different skin color, share a different kind of identity, and not wanting to be able to integrate them is exactly what motivates our side of the house to give these people the redress and enfranchisement in order to be able to help them band together and to be able to form some sort of community settlement, of which when the international community through the UN and other peacekeeping forces for humanitarian aid are more identifiable to be able to find who we can give and how we allocate. That is to say, we're able to cut through any corrupt bureaucracy or hate coming from the existing state that makes it directly able to help these people so they cannot forward these campaigns of smear or hate that otherwise would help them. We think that ultimately, in status quo, we can best strike that balance and appeal to these particular people in a less hostile and adversarial way in order to be able to unlock the majority of success cases. Take note that this approach is transitional. In a perfect world, we want to fully be able to integrate everyone and they can hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But in instances where it's riddled with quite a lot of conflict, our approach of this autonomous settlement is actually easier to be able to govern and manage, to be able to help the interests of these very diverse people coming from war-torn states with a very different background. We are very proud to open and stand on side proposition.